There are some nights that don't feel like they belong to time. Nights where the air is too still, the silence too loud, and you begin to wonder if the universe is quietly testing your soul. This story begins on one such night. Daniel Cross was the kind of man whose name echoed in boardrooms and tech summits, printed in sleek font across the cover of magazines, heralded as a visionary billionaire. But what no article ever told you, what no headline could capture, was that Daniel had lost the only thing that ever truly made him feel like a man: love. And not just love, but the kind of love that wrapped itself around your identity and made the world seem less cruel. 12 years of marriage dissolved not with rage, not even betrayal, but with silence. Paperwork signed, rings removed, a future rewritten in past tense. And when the ink dried, Daniel didn't return to his Malibu mansion. He didn't retreat to champagne or staff or the cold glow of smart devices waiting to serve his every whim. Instead, he disappeared. No GPS, no destination, just him and the storm pressing against his windshield. And where did he end up? A forgotten roadside inn on the edge of nowhere, the kind of place where ghosts linger and time has a heartbeat. But this wasn't just a detour, this was a reckoning. And the moment the receptionist whispered, "I've been expecting you," Daniel knew something much deeper was beginning. Stick with me until the very end, because this isn't just a story about heartbreak. It's about rediscovery, second chances, and a quiet kind of redemption no money could ever buy. Don't forget to subscribe to John's Stories for more incredible tales every day. Now, let's begin. It had been raining for hours, the kind of rain that blurs everything: vision, thoughts, even memory. I didn't intend to drive for that long, but when you've just walked out of a lawyer's office with half your life in a manila envelope, you don't exactly plan your next move. I don't know what pulled me off the interstate. The sign for Maple Hollow Inn was barely visible through the downpour, and half its bulbs had burnt out. But there was something about it. Something quiet, like it didn't care who I was, or who I used to be. The moment I stepped out of the car, I felt out of place. Italian leather shoes sinking into gravel, a $1,000 coat absorbing every raindrop like penance. I pulled my old duffel bag from the trunk, the one I hadn't used since college, and walked toward the door. Inside, the inn smelled like lavender and dust. Familiar and strangely maternal. No check-in counter buzzed, no staff uniforms clicked against marble. Just the creak of wooden floors, the hum of an old clock, and a woman behind the desk who seemed to belong to the place more than the wallpaper. She looked up. Her hair was white, pulled into a loose bun. Her eyes, unreadable. "Evening," she said softly. "Looking for a room?" I nodded, still dripping. "Name?" she asked, pulling out a thick registry book. "Daniel Cross." If she recognized it, she didn't show it. That was new, refreshing even. She handed me a tarnished key with a carved wooden tag, Room 12. And then she said it. "I've been expecting you." I froze. Those words didn't belong here. They belonged to Emily, my ex-wife. She used to say that when I came home early from trips, smiling with her arms outstretched, like she was her entire world. I looked at the receptionist, trying to gauge for meaning. She just smiled like she knew what had stirred inside me. "The inn's small, but it has its ways," she said. As I walked down the hallway toward my room, something inside me broke open. The past wasn't haunting me, it was bleeding through the walls. The wallpaper, the floorboards, the faded paintings all seemed to whisper the same question. What have you become? I stepped inside room 12. No modern gadgets, no glowing screens, just a bed, a chair, a wooden desk, and the scent of aged timber and solitude. I sat on the edge of the mattress, and for the first time in a decade, I didn't know what to do. I cried. Not the kind of tears that come from watching a sad movie or hearing bad news. No, these were guttural, wrenching sobs, the kind you choke on because they've been buried too long. I cried for the dinners I missed, for the apologies I never gave, for the woman I once called my home and treated like a guest. I had been a genius at everything, except being present. And in the end, all my success became the thing I used to avoid the truth. There's a moment when your heart breaks not from what you've lost, but from realizing how much of it you gave away carelessly. That was my moment. The next morning, a tray of breakfast appeared outside my door. Toast, warm tea, fruit. No knock, no note, just presence. And it hit me how foreign that felt. You see, wealth is noisy. It wants to be seen, heard, envied. But care, real, intentional care, that's quiet. It shows up without asking to be acknowledged. For the first time in years, I didn't reach for my phone. I wasn't ready to face messages from colleagues pretending to care, or the pitying texts from people who hadn't called in years. I wasn't ready for the silence from Emily's number either, even though I knew it would come. So I sat. I listened to the wind, watched the pines sway, and let stillness do what no therapist ever could, make me confront myself. By the third day, I found myself drawn to the same small armchair by the window, watching the forest shift from gray to green as the rain slowly gave way to morning light. It felt like a quiet rhythm was returning, not one of deadlines and meetings, but of breath, of being. That morning, I walked out of room 12 for the first time without the weight of obligation. Not to take a call, not to check stock prices, just to exist. I found her, the receptionist, Beatrice, behind the counter arranging ceramic mugs like they were fine china. She didn't ask questions, she didn't greet me with a script. She just smiled in that knowing way, as if she'd seen this all before. "It's good to see you, Mr. Cross," she said. I nodded, still awkward in my own skin. I was starting to think the inn had swallowed me whole. She laughed, a soft, warm sound that felt older than both of us. Then I asked her something that had been weighing on me since the moment I arrived. "Why did you say you were expecting me?" She paused, stirred her tea, but didn't drink it. This inn has a habit. It attracts people who are in between. Not lost necessarily, but not found either. It offers space, not to forget, but to remember what mattered before the world got so loud. I didn't answer, because she was right. She slid a small lunchbox across the counter, packed with sandwiches. "There's a trail out back, leads to the lake. Not long, but healing. Sometimes a walk helps the pieces settle." So I walked, and every step felt like forgiveness. The air out there was different, crisper, quieter. No echo of conference calls, no beeping notifications, just the occasional birdsong and the sound of my own footsteps through wet leaves. And somewhere along that path, the memories came. Not in a flood, but in gentle waves. I saw Emily, not the woman who stared past me in the courtroom, but the one from our early days, laughing in Florence, barefoot in a hotel room eating gelato from the carton. I could still hear her voice. "God, Daniel, you take everything so seriously. Just breathe." She was right. I never knew how to breathe unless I was controlling the world around me. I built systems, empires, efficiencies, but I never learned to build ease.
I remembered the little things we lost. She stopped leaving notes in my laptop bag. I stopped cooking Sunday breakfast. We started sleeping on opposite edges of the bed, thinking space was safer than honesty. It wasn't an affair. It wasn't betrayal. It was apathy, neglect. We began to orbit each other like distant moons, always circling, never colliding. I buried myself in meetings. She learned to dine alone. I brought home awards and bonuses. She stopped asking how my day went. And we both told ourselves, this is normal. This is life. But it wasn't. It was the slow erosion of love disguised as routine. I sat on a fallen log near the lake, opened the lunchbox, and found a note. Sometimes we have to lose something to understand its worth. Other times we have to lose it to move forward. Wisdom is knowing which one it is. Beatrice. I stared at her handwriting for a long time. It made me think of something my mother used to say long before I ever knew what love was. The loudest pain is often the one we never name. That note, it named mine. When I returned to the inn, the air inside felt different. Not emptier, fuller. Like the silence had stopped mocking me and started listening instead. I noticed a tall mirror by the staircase, brass frame, slightly tarnished. I could have sworn it hadn't been there before. I walked up to it slowly and studied the man inside. For the first time in years, I didn't see a CEO or a divorcee or a cautionary tale. I saw a man who had forgotten how to show up. And I whispered to my reflection, barely audible, I gave up without trying. That's when the tears returned. But this time it wasn't just grief for Emily. It was grief for me. For the parts of me that stopped calling her beautiful. For the mornings I chose boardrooms over her smile. For the nights I let silence win instead of saying, let's talk. When I sat back down at the front desk, Beatrice didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. I realized something, I said quietly. She looked up with those still, deep eyes. I still love her. And maybe we both gave up too soon. She nodded, not with approval, but understanding. Then she reached into a drawer and pulled out a journal bound in soft leather. She placed it in front of me gently, like it was a sacred object. The guests of room 12 often leave something behind before they go. A thought, a truth, a piece of who they were when they arrived. I flipped open the journal, blank pages, waiting for something real. I picked up the pen and wrote. Not to Emily, not even to myself, just the truth. That night I didn't sleep, but I rested. There's a difference. I closed the journal, packed my bag, and in the early morning I left the key on the counter. Beatrice looked at me with that quiet kindness again, not needing to say goodbye. As I stepped back into the car and pulled away from the inn, the pine trees didn't feel haunting anymore. They felt like sentinels, protecting something ancient and necessary. Something like clarity. And here's where the story could have ended, but it didn't. Because the truth has a way of pulling you back towards unfinished chapters. And love, no matter how bruised, doesn't vanish. It waits.
When I reached Emily's house, I didn't know what I'd say. I had practiced a dozen different versions of my arrival in my head, some dramatic, some tender, some desperate. But when I stood on her porch, hands trembling, all of them vanished. There was no perfect script to fix what we broke, no speech to undo the nights of silence, the forgotten birthdays, the slowly widening space between us. So I rang the doorbell once and let the quiet answer me. I could hear my own heartbeat. I hadn't felt this unsure of myself since the day I first asked her out. The door opened slowly. Emily stood there. No makeup, just a loose sweater, jeans, and bare feet on hardwood. Her hair was up in a bun the way she wore it when she was working around the house, the way she always looked on Sunday mornings, back when we used to spend them reading in bed. But something had changed. Her frame was thinner, her collarbones sharp beneath the fabric. There was no hatred in her eyes, no shock even, just tiredness. As if she'd cried all the tears already, as if she'd already buried the man I used to be. I couldn't breathe. She stepped aside without a word, and I followed her into the living room. The same room where we once shared wine and dumb jokes, where we once sat side by side, but miles apart. Now we sat across from each other, this time facing the distance. The silence wasn't hostile. It wasn't the kind that used to say, "I don't care." This one said, "I'm scared." And I was too. So I spoke first. "I didn't leave because I stopped loving you," I said, voice cracking. "I left because I thought you already had." Emily looked down at her hands, twisting the fabric of her sleeve between her fingers. "I just kept going," I added. "We didn't fight for us. Not really. We let the clock decide when it was over." Her eyes met mine, and in that look there was pain. Not fresh pain, but old, settled pain, like a wound that had scarred but still remembered the blade. And then she whispered, "I don't want to repeat the past." She paused, but I never stopped hoping for something more. We didn't say "I love you" that night. We didn't promise forever. We didn't kiss like in the movies, but we did something more sacred. We made a promise to show up, to try again, not as who we were, but as who we could be. Let me pause here to say something to you. Yes, you listening to this story right now. We often imagine love as fireworks and grand gestures, but more often, it's about the quiet decision to stay, to show up every day even when the magic fades, to keep choosing each other when life pulls you in 100 directions. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit, "I failed you, but I want to try again." 3 years passed, and the sky over our garden was pale blue that afternoon, dotted with clouds shaped like wishes. Children's laughter rang out, the kind of laughter that only happens when the world still feels magical. Our daughters, giggling and chasing bubbles, danced through the lawn in white sundresses. Yes, daughters. Because love, when tended to, blooms in places you never expected. We had remarried in the simplest ceremony imaginable. Just a few close friends, no tuxedos, no band, just the sound of second chances. Beatrice came. I still remember the moment I saw her in the back row, smiling quietly, the same knowing smile from the front desk. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. When the vows were said and the rings exchanged, I took Emily's hand, looked into her eyes, and this time I didn't hide the tears. "I never thought I'd get another chance to marry you," I told her. "But now I know
I was never meant to love anyone else." She didn't answer. She just held my hand tighter. Later that evening, as the sky turned amber and our daughters collapsed onto picnic blankets from pure joy, Beatrice approached me. She held something small wrapped in cloth. "I thought you might want to keep this," she said. I opened it. It was the key to room 12, tarnished, familiar, heavy with meaning. I smiled, looking from the key to the woman I once lost and to the life we had built, not with money, but with grace. "I already have," I whispered. Beatrice nodded, and just like that, she faded into the party, letting the music and laughter carry the moment forward. I think about that key often. It now rests in a drawer beside our bed, next to crumpled love notes and our daughter's first drawings. It's not just a key to a room. It's a reminder that what we lost didn't vanish. It waited. Waited for us to be ready. Waited for us to stop chasing perfect and start healing what was real. There are 1,000 Daniel crosses out there. People who have built skyscrapers and platforms and legacies, but forgot how to say, "I miss you." If that's you, if you're listening to this wondering whether it's too late, it's not. Not if there's still breath in your lungs and hope in your heart. Not if you're still willing to choose love, quietly, daily, humbly. Have you ever had a moment where pretending led to something unexpectedly real? Please comment below and like this video if you believe the best love stories start with honesty. Subscribe our channel now for more powerful story-based videos.
I often reflect on that first night back at the inn, the way the rain masked my exhaustion, the way Beatrice spoke as if she already knew me. In a world obsessed with instant gratification, that night gave me something rare. Space. Not to escape, but to confront. Not to forget, but to remember. You know, we don't talk enough about emotional exhaustion. Not the burnout from working too much, but the kind that happens when you stop feeling seen by someone you once thought you'd grow old with. When love shifts from a living, breathing force to something you have to remember you had. That's the weight Daniel Cross, the man I used to be, carried into that motel. Not grief for a breakup, but grief for letting something so beautiful starve in silence. When you lose a person through neglect, your own neglect, you don't get to mourn like the movies show. There's no screaming match, no dramatic goodbye at the airport. Instead, it's quieter. It's waking up beside them and realizing you're alone. It's dinner at the same table but with nothing to say. It's anniversaries celebrated like chores. That's the heartbreak of emotional erosion. But here's the truth I found buried beneath all the noise. Love doesn't die a quick death. It fades slowly, painfully, waiting for someone, anyone, to fight for it. And when neither person does, it becomes a ghost in your own home. That's what happened to us. And it's why I cried like a child in room 12. But I want to talk now to those of you who think second chances are for fairy tales. Let me tell you about the real ones. The second chance I got wasn't handed to me. It didn't come wrapped in forgiveness and tied with a ribbon of nostalgia. It came through work, through unlearning, through the raw discomfort of becoming someone worthy of being loved again. Emily didn't trust me overnight. Our conversations were awkward at first. We didn't magically fall back into sync. We stumbled. We had nights where we still slept on opposite sides of the bed. We had arguments about nothing that were really about everything. We had to relearn each other's bodies, rhythms, needs. But we also had grace. Because when two people choose to stay after walking through the fire, something beautiful happens. Love becomes intentional. We didn't expect butterflies. We built roots. One Sunday morning, about a year after we'd reconciled, I made pancakes. The girls were watching cartoons, syrup dripped down the counter, and Emily walked into the kitchen, hair messy, robe half open, and she just looked at me. Really looked at me. Then she said, "You showed up." I was confused. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "I don't know. I guess I just thought you'd say all the right things and then slowly disappear again. But you stayed." That moment meant more to me than any award, any IPO launch, any media headline I've ever had. Because it wasn't about being impressive. It was about being present. You see, we glorify the idea of falling in love, the spark, the chase, the first kiss, but we rarely celebrate staying in love, the mundane moments, the quiet forgiveness, the vulnerability it takes to admit, "I was wrong, but I'm trying." That's what real love is. Not grand romantic gestures, but the hand that reaches for yours when you're too tired to speak. The cup of coffee made without being asked. The willingness to rebuild a bridge, even when you're the one who burned it. And that's the real lesson of this story. Not that Daniel Cross, or I, was some tragic romantic hero who found redemption in a dusty roadside inn, but that every single one of us has room to heal, to return, to try again. Maybe not every love story ends in a second wedding and children's laughter on a summer lawn. Maybe some endings are permanent. But that doesn't mean you don't have the right to learn from it, to become softer, better, truer. Beatrice once told me, "The inn draws people during times of transition." But I think the truth is even deeper. That key she gave me, the one marked room 12, it wasn't to a motel room. It was to the door inside myself I had locked shut. And now, years later, when our daughters fall asleep between us on a lazy Sunday afternoon, when Emily laughs at something stupid I said, and I whisper, "I love you," and she whispers back, "I know," I realize that door never closed again. So, here's what I'll leave you with. If you're driving aimlessly through your own storm right now, emotionally, spiritually, maybe even literally, don't run from that stillness. Don't drown it out with busyness. Let it speak. Let it break you open. Let it lead you somewhere quiet. Because sometimes, in the middle of nowhere, you find the only place you were ever meant to be. And when someone or something whispers, "I've been expecting you," don't be afraid. It might just be your soul coming home. So many people today are surviving instead of living. They stay in relationships with no connection, build careers without purpose, and chase validation instead of vulnerability. But you don't have to live that way. You can stop. You can show up again. You can tell the truth, even if your voice shakes. And maybe, just maybe, the person on the other side is waiting for that same truth. Don't let pride become your legacy. Let love be. Let it start quietly, let it grow slowly, but let it be real. If this story moved you, even just a little, I ask one thing. Tell someone you love them. Not tomorrow, not when it's safe, but now. And if you're looking for more stories like this, stories that hurt, heal, and hold your heart, hit that subscribe button right here on John Stories channel. We tell real stories for real people every day. Thanks for listening. You're never as alone as you think.